This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Ben Broadchester and the occasional pop-in Sylvester Romero. On this week's Takedown Thursdays, we talk to you about Oklahoma State University, the Cowboys. First and foremost, we talk about that victory over Iowa State, and we talk about how Okie State and Iowa will be in ESPN nationally televised dual meet on February 22nd. So we're going to break down both of those and whatever else comes up in the time of recording. And also we'll talk about the amplifications of Mekhi Lewis now at the NJRTC. All of that on today's epi. So that is today's Takedown Thursdays, presented by the Weigh-In. So we jump right into this one. The quickest one we got for you today, Mekhi Lewis, NJRTC. That, I think, goes right along with the nationally televised. So Mekhi Lewis at NJRTC tells us that Mekhi Lewis is back on the move again. Well, I mean, on the move to NJRTC, and it means that you're going to see a really good-looking Rutgers program. And I say that because NJRTC, a lot of those guys are always over there. Obviously, that's not pure the case. In most cases, it all depends. So let's actually break that down for you. Let's actually figure that out. Let's see if we can figure that out. Let's see if we can figure out if we can find something here. So no, we got it wrong. That would be a plus for Princeton. Princeton, that's what's right out of Princeton. So you look at NJRTC now, and you say you got Mekhi Lewis, you got Quincy Monday over there. Let's actually see who those residents are. Let's actually see who's who on NJRTC. Because if we can figure out who's who, we'll learn. If we can find something. Well, we have not, but I'm sure we can put like a gist together. They got Quincy Monday. They got Yankira Thomas. Let's see if we could. Tanner Hudgens looks like one of them that may or may not still be there. So there's a lot of stuff going around. A lot of stuff going around with what happens. So I think that in terms of all that, it's going to look good. You're going to have an even better. You're going to have a Mekhi Lewis. And the only reason why I say that's good for Princeton is because that's another guy that you could probably walk in there and roll around with. And that's a national champ at that. So that's a really good thing. And why I say this ties into the nationally televised Cowboys Iowa State dual meet. We're getting a lot of good wrestling going around. Good wrestling. And we're getting the attention of national because this is not the only dual meet that was on ESPN. We had a lot of stuff on ESPN this year. A lot of stuff that has made it. I'm pretty sure. Let me see if I can pull up a list of what was on ESPN, and then that'll kind of help us best understand what has been on. But we're getting a lot more dual meets on ESPN. They're starting to take on more dual meets in terms of wrestling. And that's a good thing. One of which I believe is my favorite to always talk about. My favorite was the Paycom National Duels. Got to see some ESPN action. I believe Paycom National Duels got to see some action. So there is a lot of stuff that looked very well in terms of it. And now to have a Okie State and Iowa dual meet, which I think is a really nifty dual meet. That it should be good on ESPN, and that's not the only one that you got. Like it just has been a really good growing year for wrestling to start the year. That we're getting even last year, we're just seeing more and more dual meets on ESPN. Like you're seeing them a lot better on ESPN. Like you really can't argue with that you get a good dual meet on ESPN in terms of wrestling. That you get it, I hope that it's a good close one. I really do. I really do hope it's a close one because the close dual meets look really good. It's just a really good thing. I don't think this gets enough attention to say, hey, this is a good thing. It is a really good thing that has going on for the sport of wrestling. It's really good. When you talk about that, it's a really good thing that you look at and you're like, wow. And when you do that, when you talk most of that, it's just a really. So let me see. You had Iowa State was on ESPN. Iowa State, the Cy Hawk dual meet was on ESPN. When you see that you had a Cy Hawk that was a 20-14 dual meet, a good one, where Iowa lost for the first time in a long time. I think it was the first time in a long time. But when you look at that, you say, wow, we're getting good stuff on ESPN now. So it's growing the sport correctly. So now, hopefully, over time, you start to see more and more dual meets on TV, where you'll see ESPN do a lot more than just one. You're seeing them do a lot of dual meets on ESPN Plus, which is really good. So you're seeing a lot of that being picked up, and we just want to see the coverage, the paid programming here, where it doesn't have to be a subscription based, where it's I understand wanting to keep some of the dual meets on Flow because as many as I'm not saying me, but I'm saying others may not agree with the things the platform does. They do a good streaming media thing. They stream real good media wise. Like they do a good broadcast. If you've seen a Flow broadcast, they do good stuff. They really got it going, and that's because you have to understand Flow for years was growing. If you all remember when they were in their green logo era to now the red logo, the new logo, Flow for years took time to grow. Where it took a lot of time, Flow Wrestling, but it got up there where it was. I get they have Flow Sports and everything, but I feel like widely known as that Flow Wrestling. Like when you go somewhere and you say, hey, oh, are they streaming this? You say Flow Wrestling. I'm pretty sure most people would know. But really, great thing has gone on here. And as for most of our topics we got going on here, most of our topics we got going on here. That Iowa State. Why was that Iowa State a 24-9 duel meet? So if we break this down there, and I was shocked at what happened. So Troy Spratley, 125. We'll start at 125. Troy Spratley beat Steve O'Poulin 3-1. I'm not surprised at that, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I know Steve O'Poulin is really good. He's a great wrestler. He can wrestle, no doubt about it. But Troy Spratley is very scrappy. That's what I like about him. He's somebody that he wrestles very well in two terms. And he's somebody that's just very. He tends to wrestle his match a lot. He doesn't tend to let people dictate the match too often. Where he tries to. He's somebody that's able to get to his offense very well. Obviously, this was a low score, but I like it. What I'm not surprised. This is what I'm not surprised at. 133. The number 12 Jags Forest Tech Fall. Osamani, Diversent, 16 zip. I'm not surprised. Jax Forrest has come right out of high school. He's doing a great thing. He's wrestling. He's wrestling tough. There's a lot of people that love to say, hey, he should have finished out high school. Or he should have. He's great where he's at, and I like it. I like it. Now let's talk about this Sergio Vargas. This one shocked me. Sergio Vargas beat Anthony Espendia 4-2. That shocked me. And it shocked me because Anthony Espendia wrestles very well. Like, I looked at this duel meet and I thought it was going to be a lot closer than it ended out, which is interesting for me at least. And then we're going to move on to 149. 149, we had Casey switch their ski up against Jacob Frost. This is another one that kind of surprised me because those Frosty boys between Evan and all of that, they're really good. And to see Jacob get beat 4-2 was, when I say see, I mean watch the duel meet. I don't mean I was physically there. 4-2 was pretty interesting. But when you look at Oklahoma State University, Okie State, they did a lot. They just wrestled very well. That's why they won this duel meet. You look at Okie State, they just wrestled very well. Like, I don't know how else to tell you. They wrestled like they were not going to let the match get out of their hands. You look at, they won 125, they won 33, they won 141, they won 149. Let's talk about this. They won 57. They got 165. You look at Okie State has all the way up to 174, has not lost a match yet. Then at 184, Isaac Dean decision over Trevor drops 5-1. Then you got Rocky Elam that wins. Then you got Younger Bestia that wins between that. You look at how many matches did not go. Like, I give MJ Grayton some credit. MJ Grayton can wrestle. We all know that. That Iowa duel meet, those swing matches that I like to call them, made the difference. Here, they just couldn't do it. You just look at that. You had 125 they lost, 133, 141, 149, 157, 165, 174. Like, the first 7 matches they lost. Like, I would have never thought that. Because I had Jacob Frost over Casey. Switch your ski. I had Jacob over Casey. That was my start. That would have got him another. I had that via decision. That would have put them It would have been a. I got you. I got you. It would have been a 21-6 dual meet. That doesn't account for all of it, but it sure does account for some of it. Let me see if I can find another one where I had. That was one of them though. It would have done it. It didn't have NJ winning. That's something that I said. I knew that wasn't gonna happen. It just is tough doing me. I had Anthony Esfindia beating Sergio as well, and that would have put him up. But it's still I did not have Iowa State winning the dual meet, and that's more than most the best way to say it. I did not have Iowa State winning the dual meet because they just didn't have it. Okie stayed all the way, and it just didn't happen. So when you look at that, you look at the quality of wrestling we've got this season is very high. Like these dual meets, not everybody will say the same thing. You got Penn State running away, beating everybody they can, which is true. But now you got these other conferences that are having good wrestling come out of there. So when we look at let's take a look at this Penn State. Since we talked about Penn State, let's take a look at this Penn State. These Nittany Lions, Penn State wrestling. Let's see what was. And you know what gets me? They were not at Paycom National Duels. And I felt like Penn State should have been there. Why are you not there? Obviously, everybody says, well, they would have won the thing. I thought Okie State was going to win the thing. And we all see what happened there. Paycom National Duels. No reason why they shouldn't have skipped out on Paycom National Duels if they were even invited. I don't want to go that far. I don't want to say they were not invited, but I feel like we should have Penn State at Paycom National Duels so that there's more of a chance for somebody to beat them. So, the last match was against Nebraska, and that was 26-12. And that was which looks like was the closest dual meet they've had all year. That was the closest dual meet they had all year. 26-12. They're going to wrestle Michigan. They're going to wrestle Ohio State. They got Princeton on there. Not much left this season, guys and girls. Guys and gals, fans of the way. Not much left season. You got so let's run it down while we are on the topic of Penn State at this point. So they start the season off Oklahoma. That was a 45-0 victory. Then they wrestled Drexel. That was a 45-3 victory. They wrestled Lehigh. That was a 36-6 victory. They wrestled Wyoming. That was a 40-7 victory. They wrestled North Dakota State. That was a 46-0 victory. They wrestled Stanford. That was a 42-0 victory. They wrestled Rutgers, which this is, I felt like, I hate to say it, that was a 46-0 victory. They wrestled Iowa. That was a 32-3 victory. They wrestled Northwestern. That was a 51-0 victory. They wrestled Indiana. That was a 48-0 victory. You wrestled Maryland. That was a 51-0 victory. They wrestled Nebraska, and that was that 26-12 victory. That was about as close as a dual meet has ever gotten to Penn State all year. And when you talk about all of that and how dominant Penn State is, Penn State's very dominant because they have really good recruiting. They have really good recruiting. Kel Sanderson gets a lot of good recruits, and we all know that Kel Sanderson gets a lot of good recruits. And that's because the recruiting of Kel Sanderson is very high. He recruits very well. A lot of people don't like it that Kel Sanderson wins a lot. A lot of people don't like it that Kel Sanderson wins a lot, but at the same time, it's because the recruiting he gets. You see the level of talent that he brings in. Now it's starting to slow down a little bit into like who's committing to Penn State. It's not all, but the time it's going to take Penn State to kind of fall off that high horse, it's going to be a long time, and it sure is not going to be the worst. But we got to see how these Windy Lions fare at nationals, how they look at this Big Ten, how that goes for them. Because if they can qualify 125 all the way up to heavyweight, they're on track for what is yet to be another team title. But you never know. The way nationals goes, the NCAA tournament, it gets wild, and you never know. So it should be fairly interesting in terms of what will go on this year. But do I think Penn State will be dethroned this year? I really don't think so. But the way that Nebraska wrestled, the fact that they've had the closest dual meet should tell you that. But what I'm looking for is I know Ohio State has had a good, solid. I'm looking for that Ohio State. That Penn State Ohio State should be a solid duel. That should be a solid duel. Let's take a look at how Ohio State wrestling has done because Ohio State wrestling turned around and has had a great year. They won the Paycom National Duels. So let's look at Ohio State, who, mind you, right now is 16-0. So they are unbeaten. That's going to be a good one. They just have not been able to be beat. I think we're going to get an old fashioned down to the last match in that. If we get a good Ohio State to wrestle, yeah. Well, for you that may not be on the Wrestle in Iowa, and that because we post our Effies on Thursdays will be February 6th, tomorrow, 8 p.m. They're going to be Wrestling Iowa on the Big Ten Network, so that should be something to take a fan look at where Ohio State, where and how Ohio State is going to look. I think that's a really good one in terms of the wrestling set to be done. That Ohio State is going to wrestle Iowa, and where that will lead is going to be interesting. I think in terms of all of that, so it should be easy to see where that phase out in terms of that. But I definitely think I like that we're having more and more dual meets on ESPN this season, and that we're seeing a lot more of it. And I solely think that's because the viewership we're getting right now is very high, and it's high because look at some things like this, y'all. The viewership, and what I mean is the amount of people watching this is, I feel like, is high. It's a lot of people that are getting up on this college wrestling because it is a good thing going on. Who can refuse a good old fashioned duel meet that is close score, where it's going to be close, where every match is going to matter. The pressure's on the line. You know, not everybody wants to see a 40-3 dual meet or a 20-6 dual meet. Everybody wants to see something. Everybody wants to see something up there. Close. Everybody wants to see something they can. Everybody wants to see something they can, a dual meet they understand they can enjoy. Something where they look and they're not like, hey, the score is already a blowout. They want something that they can look at and say, wow, Well, I'm speaking for me personally. I can't speak for anybody else. So I'm speaking for me personally. I like a close dual meet because it brings a lot more pressure. Brings a lot of pressure back into the wrestling when you have a close dual meet like that. And I think those are really good because of the sheer hold. You're gonna get good wrestling, even if you get bad wrestling. Every match is comes down to a little different. Like when you're in a 40 or a huge lead, you're 30-0 or whatever the case may be. At some point, you start saying, hey, you want to get points on the board, but it just doesn't, it's not the same urgency as, hey, we may need bonus points are going to make the difference here. Type of dual meet. It's all about, the bonus points are going to make a difference here. And that's kind of why I feel like when a match is closer, it's a little more urgent. It's like, no, no, no. It's not when you're up big. It's like, all right, at this point, go ahead and try a few tricks, try some new stuff because we're up anyway. It makes it a lot more different, and that's what I like about a closer dual meet than a runaway dual meet. In team score, I kind of think it's better to have a close dual meet than it is a runaway. So that's one thing I like to. I say all the time is it's closer to have a close dual meet than it is a runaway. And I think that in terms of a lot of the sheerfold wrestling we may or may not get, I think it's fairly easy to know what, like when you look at some of these teams and you look at the strength of them and the non-strength of them, you say, hey, you know, that's what is and is not going to happen. And I think there's no right or wrong way to really to really say it. It's just it is what it is. It comes out the way it does. So we got we got that all right. So if we're gonna do something here, as we always do. We're gonna give you what WrestleStat, as we've used them before, what WrestleStats believes is the. Let's see if we could get it. The comparison on who WrestleStat thinks is gonna win the duel meet. So if we put WrestleStat prediction says 17 Oklahoma State, 15 Iowa. That'd be a nice duel meet if we got it like that. Well, that is all I have for you on this episode. That being said, like, comment, subscribe, share. This is the Weigh In Podcast by Ben Chestnut and the occasional Papa Sylvester Romero. I will see you guys on the next epi. So, Weigh In out. The Weigh In, where stories ignite.